What if I told you that the very same glass of milk you drink every single morning with total peace of mind could be raising your blood sugar levels more than you ever dared to imagine? I am not talking about obvious culprits like donuts or sodas. I am talking about something that has probably been a cornerstone of your routine for decades. Something you were always told was healthy, wholesome, and even essential for your bones. Yet in the silence of every passing day, it could be pushing your glucose levels higher and higher, forcing your pancreas to work double shifts and slowly draining your energy without you even realizing why it is happening. The hardest part is not just the physical toll. The hardest part is the psychological weight. It is that crushing sense of frustration you feel when you believe you are doing everything right. You watch what you eat, you strictly avoid added sugars, you try to walk a few extra miles every week, and you have sacrificed so many foods you once loved. And yet, when you prick your finger and wait for that number to appear on the screen, the results simply do not drop the way they should. You feel trapped. You feel like you are failing at a game where the rules keep changing, and you do not understand what went wrong. I want to say something to you with absolute clarity from the very beginning. You are not doing things wrong. This is not a lack of discipline. It is not a lack of effort or willpower. What you are experiencing is the result of a lack of clear, honest information. For many years, the global food industry has mastered the art of presenting certain products as healthy by using words that sound reassuring but do not tell the full story of what happens inside a human body. Milk is perhaps one of the most powerful examples of this marketing success. I am Dr. Ethan Cole, and today we are going to talk about exactly that. We are going to look at milk, but not in a superficial way. We are going to examine the precise way it affects your physiology if you are living with diabetes or struggling with blood sugar management. We will uncover which types of milk are silently sabotaging your control without you ever suspecting them, which options are actually backed by scientific evidence to help you, and the single most common mistake that almost everyone makes every morning without even noticing. Stay with me, because what you are about to discover today can completely change the way you start your morning. Sometimes it is right there in that very first glass of the day where the difference between health and chronic fatigue begins. If you have lived with a diagnosis for some time, there is a question that has surely crossed your mind more than once. It is a simple, direct question that hides layers of confusion. Doctor, can I drink milk? I understand that question perfectly because milk has been present in our lives since the day we were born. From childhood, we were conditioned to believe it is synonymous with strength, nutrition, and vitality. That is why, when a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes arrives, removing sugar seems logical, but milk often escapes suspicion entirely. In my clinic, I have seen so many patients who make an enormous effort to take care of themselves. They give up the soda, they reduce the bread, they obsessively check labels, and they walk until their legs are tired. But every morning, almost as a reflex, they pour a large glass of milk. It is an automatic gesture, an unquestioned part of the routine. This is where the problem hides. That small decision, repeated 365 times a year, can interfere directly with your sugar control. Not because you are making a mistake on purpose, but because no one ever sat you down to explain how that specific liquid acts in your body when you have insulin resistance. The industry has done an effective job creating a halo of health around these products. Words like natural, light, fat-free, or calcium-enriched sound comforting. But none of those words tell you the only thing that actually matters, how your glucose responds after you swallow it. There are decisions that seem correct on the surface but are quietly blocking your progress day after day. Today, we are going to remove that veil and look at the science of your morning routine. Before we move forward into the specific types of milk, there is a biological foundation I need to explain to you in a very simple way. If you truly grasp this concept, everything else we discuss today will click into place perfectly. When we talk about type 2 diabetes or prediabetes, we are really talking about a fundamental breakdown in the way your body manages its primary fuel, sugar. I want you to imagine for a moment that your cells are like tiny houses with locked doors. Inside those houses is where the magic happens. It is where sugar is burned to create the energy that allows you to think, move, and breathe. Now imagine that insulin is the key to those doors. In a perfectly healthy body, when you eat, sugar enters the bloodstream. The pancreas releases insulin, and that key slides into the lock without any resistance. The door swings open, the sugar enters the cell, and your blood levels remain stable. Everything flows in a beautiful, natural harmony. However, in the state of diabetes or insulin resistance, those locks are not working correctly. It is as if the locks have become rusted, jammed, or filled with debris over time. The key is still there, your pancreas is still producing insulin, but the key no longer fits with ease. Because the doors stay shut, the sugar has nowhere to go. It cannot enter the cells to become energy, so it stays trapped in your bloodstream, circulating endlessly. That concentration of trapped sugar is exactly what you see as a high number on your glucose monitor. Now here is the crucial part. Every time you consume something containing carbohydrates, your digestive system breaks them down into glucose. That glucose hits your bloodstream and starts knocking on those rusted doors. Depending on the type of food or liquid you consumed, that sugar can arrive like a gentle, slow-moving stream, or it can arrive like a violent tidal wave. This brings us to a concept that is vital for your survival and health, the glycemic index. This is essentially a scale that ranks how quickly a food raises your blood sugar. Some foods open the faucet all the way, letting the sugar rush in with intense pressure. Others let it out drop by drop. Your body, especially one with rusted locks, handles the second option much better. The sudden tidal wave of sugar is what causes a spike, and these spikes are incredibly toxic. They damage your blood vessels, they exhaust your pancreas, and they leave you feeling drained and irritable once the inevitable crash happens. When we talk about milk, most people think it is a protein drink, but from a biological perspective, milk is a complex liquid that contains a very specific type of sugar called lactose. Lactose is a disaccharide, meaning it is made of two smaller sugars, glucose and galactose. The moment you drink it, your body begins to split those apart. What many people fail to realize is that liquids are processed much faster than solids. When you eat a piece of whole fruit, the fiber slows down the sugar. But when you drink milk, especially on an empty stomach, there is very little to stop that lactose from being converted and rushed into your bloodstream. For a body with insulin resistance, this is a massive biological demand. Your pancreas, which is already struggling, suddenly has to pump out massive amounts of insulin to deal with this liquid sugar hit. Over time, this constant pressure causes what I call cellular fatigue. Your cells become even more resistant to insulin because they are tired of being bombarded. It is a vicious cycle. The more spikes you have, the more rusted the locks become. The more rusted the locks, the higher your blood sugar stays. This is why we cannot just look at whether a food is good or bad. We have to look at the three critical factors that determine its impact on your life. First, the natural sugar content, which in milk is the lactose. Second, the glycemic index, or the speed of the hit. And third, the hidden additives that the modern food industry sneaks into the processing plant. Understanding this battlefield is the first step toward reclaiming your health. You have to stop thinking about calories and start thinking about biological responses. Once you understand how your internal locks are reacting to what you pour into your glass, you gain the power to choose a different path. You are no longer a victim of a confusing disease. You become the architect of your own recovery. Now that we understand the biological battlefield, we need to address the most famous liquid in human history, whole cow's milk. For generations, we have been told that milk is the perfect food. And in many ways, for a growing child, it is a miracle of nature. But for an adult struggling with a metabolism that has lost its flexibility, whole milk presents a very specific and dangerous paradox. Most people believe that the problem with whole milk lies in its fat content. We have been conditioned by decades of health advice to fear saturated fats and cholesterol. However, I want to tell you something that might surprise you. From the perspective of a diabetic patient, the fat in whole milk is actually not the primary enemy. In fact, if you were to choose between whole milk and skim milk, the fat-free version is often much worse for your blood sugar because it lacks the fat needed to slow down the absorption of the milk's sugar. The real culprit, the silent saboteur we mentioned earlier, is the lactose. As a physician, I frequently see patients who think they are being safe because they aren't eating sugar, but one standard glass of milk contains about 12 grams of lactose. To your body, 12 grams of lactose is effectively 12 grams of sugar. If you drink 2 glasses throughout the morning, you have consumed 24 grams of sugar before you have even had lunch. For a body that cannot open its cellular doors easily, this is like trying to pour a bucket of water into a clogged drain. It simply overflows into your bloodstream. But there is a second, more hidden layer to this paradox. Science has shown that milk is highly insulinotropic. This is a technical way of saying that milk stimulates your pancreas to release a massive amount of insulin, far more than the actual sugar content would suggest. This happens because of specific proteins found in dairy, like whey. While these proteins are great for building muscle, in a person with insulin resistance, they force the pancreas to work even harder, pumping out insulin into a body that is already ignoring it. It is like screaming at someone who has their hands over their ears. Eventually, the person screaming, your pancreas, gets exhausted. Let me share the story of a patient named David. David is a 55-year-old engineer, a man of great discipline and logic. He was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes 3 years ago and had managed to cut out all the obvious sweets. He walked 5 kilometers every evening, yet his fasting glucose every morning was stubbornly stuck at 145 or 150. He was deeply frustrated, feeling that his body was betraying his hard work. During our consultation, we looked at his morning routine. David didn't eat breakfast, but he drank 2 large mugs of coffee with a very generous amount of whole milk, no sugar added. To him, that milk was healthy protein. He didn't realize that those 2 mugs were hitting his system with nearly 30 grams of lactose, while his body was already in its most insulin-resistant state of the day. We made one single change. We replaced the cow's milk with a low-impact alternative that I will describe later. Within just 14 days, David's morning numbers dropped to 115. He didn't change his exercise, his medication, or his dinner. He simply stopped bombarding his pancreas with liquid sugar the moment he woke up. David told me something I will never forget. He said he felt like a weight had been lifted off his chest because for the first time the numbers finally made sense. If you are a lover of traditional milk, you don't necessarily have to banish it forever, but you must understand its cost. If you consume it, you must limit it to a very small amount and never drink it alone. But if your goal is to truly heal your metabolism, we need to look at options that don't force your pancreas to scream. As the world became more aware of the issues with dairy, a new industry exploded: plant-based milks. On the surface, this sounds like the perfect solution for someone with diabetes. Words like vegan, plant-based, natural, and heart-healthy dominate the packaging. But this is where I need you to be extremely cautious. This is the marketing mirage, and it is a trap that many of my most well-intentioned patients fall into every single day. The most dangerous players in this category are oat milk and rice milk. Let's start with oat milk. Oats in their whole form are a wonderful source of fiber, but the process of turning oats into milk is a violent one. To make it creamy and liquid, manufacturers use enzymes to break down the oat starches. This process essentially pre-digests the carbohydrates, turning them into a simple sugar called maltose. When you drink oat milk, you are not eating fiber-rich oats. You are drinking a liquid that has a glycemic index higher than many sodas. It hits your bloodstream with incredible speed. And because it feels healthy, people often drink much larger quantities of it. Then we have rice milk, which I consider to be one of the worst choices a person with diabetes can make. Rice milk is almost pure starch in liquid form. Its glycemic index is frequently measured at nearly 100, which is the same as eating pure glucose or white bread. It is a massive, immediate spike that sends your sugar levels into the stratosphere. To make matters worse, the food industry knows that these plant milks can taste thin or bitter in their natural state, so they add flavor. Even the versions that don't say chocolate or vanilla on the front often have cane sugar or rice syrup hidden in the ingredient list to make them more palatable. I want to tell you about Sarah. Sarah is a 42-year-old teacher who was recently told she was pre-diabetic. Terrified of the diagnosis, she decided to go completely plant-based. She replaced her morning milk with a popular brand of vanilla oat milk. She thought she was doing the best possible thing for her health. But 3 months later, Sarah's A1C levels, the measure of her average blood sugar, had actually gone up. She came to me in tears, convinced that her genetics were so bad that no diet could save her. When we looked at her healthy oat milk, we found that a single serving contained 16 grams of added sugar on top of the natural maltose from the oats. She was effectively drinking a dessert for breakfast every morning under the guise of health food. This is the cruelty of the marketing mirage. It takes people who are desperate to be healthy and sells them a product that makes them sicker. If you are standing in the supermarket aisle, I want you to remember this rule: ignore the front of the carton. The front is a billboard designed to sell you a fantasy. Turn the carton around and look at the total carbohydrates and the added sugars. If you see more than 2 or 3 grams of carbohydrates, that milk is not your friend. If you see the word maltodextrin or any form of syrup, put it back on the shelf. Vegetal does not mean safe. Natural does not mean stable blood sugar. Your body does not care about the philosophy of the food. It only cares about the chemical response it triggers in your blood. In the next section, we are going to talk about the warriors, the specific types of milk that actually provide the creaminess you want without the metabolic destruction you fear. If you are feeling overwhelmed by the traps we just discussed, I want you to take a deep breath. There is a path forward, and it doesn't involve drinking black coffee for the rest of your life. We are now entering the territory of the low-impact warriors. These are the alternatives that I recommend most often in my clinical practice because they allow you to enjoy the ritual of a creamy morning beverage without the catastrophic metabolic price tag. The first warrior is one you have likely seen in every grocery store: unsweetened almond milk. Now, I must emphasize the word unsweetened because, as we discussed, the flavored versions are just sugar in disguise. But true, pure almond milk is a physiological marvel for someone with diabetes. Let's look at the numbers. 1 cup of unsweetened almond milk typically contains only 1 gram of carbohydrates. Compare that to the 12 grams in cow's milk or the 20 plus grams in rice milk. For your body, 1 gram of carbohydrate is almost metabolically invisible. It is what I call inert fuel. When you drink it, your blood sugar barely notices. There is no tidal wave of glucose, no panicked response from your pancreas, and no sudden rush of insulin. Furthermore, almonds are naturally rich in vitamin E. Why does this matter for a diabetic? Diabetes is a state of chronic oxidative stress. High sugar levels act like biological rust on your blood vessels and organs. Vitamin E is a powerful antioxidant that helps neutralize some of that damage. By choosing almond milk, you aren't just avoiding a spike, you are providing your cells with a small layer of protection. The second warrior is unsweetened coconut milk. Now, I know what many of you are thinking, but Dr. Cole, isn't coconut milk full of saturated fat? This is a classic example of where old nutritional advice fails to see the modern scientific picture. The fats in coconut milk are primarily medium-chain triglycerides, or MCTs. Unlike the long-chain fats found in a greasy burger, MCTs are handled differently by your liver. They are converted into energy almost immediately rather than being stored as body fat. But even more exciting is the research suggesting that these specific fats can actually improve insulin sensitivity over time. By providing a stable source of energy that doesn't require an insulin key to enter the cell, you give your overworked pancreas a chance to rest. Let me tell you about Michael. Michael is a 60-year-old grandfather who has lived with type 2 diabetes for over a decade. He suffered from what we call the dawn phenomenon. Every morning, his liver would dump sugar into his blood to help him wake up, meaning his glucose was already high before he even sat down for breakfast. For years, Michael had a bowl of cereal with skim milk every morning. He thought he was being heart healthy. In reality, he was adding a massive sugar spike on top of an already high morning baseline. He felt sluggish and foggy until noon. We made a simple adjustment. We replaced his breakfast with a protein-rich meal and shifted his milk to unsweetened almond milk. Within a month, the brain fog vanished. Because he was no longer forcing his blood sugar to 220 every morning at 8 a.m., his body could finally stabilize. He told me he felt like he had reclaimed his mornings. He could finally play with his grandkids in the backyard without needing to sit down after 20 minutes. When you use these low-impact warriors, remember that quality matters. Look for brands with the shortest ingredient lists. Avoid gums and thickeners like carrageenan if possible, but above all, ensure that the sugar count is 0. We have now reached what I consider to be the gold standard of milk alternatives for metabolic health. It is an option that is often misunderstood and sometimes unfairly maligned, but the scientific evidence in its favor is overwhelming. I am talking about high-quality, unsweetened soy milk. If almond and coconut milk are the warriors because they stay out of the way of your blood sugar, soy milk is the healer because it actively helps you manage your metabolism. The reason for this lies in one word: protein. A single glass of unsweetened soy milk provides about 7 to 8 grams of high-quality plant protein. This is roughly the same amount found in cow's milk, but without the lactose sugar. For a diabetic, this protein is your greatest ally. In medical terms, protein slows down gastric emptying. This means that when you consume protein with your meal, the food stays in your stomach longer and enters the small intestine more slowly. Think of it like a security guard at a busy stadium. Without the guard, the crowd, the sugar, rushes in all at once and causes a crush. With the guard, the soy protein, the crowd is forced to enter one by one through a turnstile. This prevents the spike and creates a long, slow, manageable curve of energy. There is also a significant cardiovascular benefit here. We know that diabetes and heart health are deeply linked. So it contains compounds called isoflavones and plant sterols, which have been shown to help lower LDL cholesterol, the bad cholesterol. By choosing soy, you are protecting your heart and your blood sugar at the same time. I often hear concerns from patients about hormones in soy. I want to clarify this. For the vast majority of adults, the phytoestrogens in soy do not behave like human estrogen in a way that causes harm. In fact, in many clinical studies, moderate soy consumption is linked to better health outcomes and a lower risk of certain chronic diseases. I remember a patient named Linda. Linda was a 50-year-old woman who struggled with what I call the sugar yo-yo. She would eat a light breakfast, but by 10:30 in the morning, she would be overcome by a shaky, urgent hunger. This would lead her to grab a muffin or a granola bar, causing another spike, followed by another crash. She was exhausted and gaining weight despite her best efforts. We introduced unsweetened soy milk into her morning routine, sometimes in her tea, sometimes as a base for a green smoothie. The change was almost immediate. Because of the 8 grams of protein in that soy milk, Linda felt full and satisfied for 4 hours instead of 2. The shaky hunger disappeared because her blood sugar wasn't crashing. By stabilizing her hunger, we were able to stop the yo-yo effect, and she began to lose the visceral fat around her midsection that had been stuck for years. The key to soy milk is to ensure it is organic and non-GMO whenever possible, as soy is a heavily processed crop, and as always, it must be the unsweetened version. When you find a clean, unsweetened soy milk, you aren't just drinking a milk substitute, you are consuming a metabolic tool designed to keep you full, stable, and energized. In the next sections, we are going to talk about a secret that most people overlook. It isn't just about what is in your glass, it is about the physical act of how you consume it. This is a detail that can make a 5-point or a 50-point difference in your glucose readings. Up to this point, we have spent a great deal of time analyzing what is inside your glass. We have dismantled the marketing myths and identified the biological heroes, but now I want to share a secret that is almost never discussed in doctors' offices or nutritional blogs. It is a detail so simple that many people dismiss it, yet it can make the difference between a minor glucose ripple and a major metabolic spike. It isn't just about what you drink. It is about how you drink it. In our modern, fast-paced world, we have lost the art of the ritual. Most of my patients start their day in a rush. They pour their beverage, they drink it in 30 seconds while standing at the kitchen counter or driving to work, and they move on. From a physiological standpoint, this is a disaster for blood sugar management. When you chug a liquid, even a healthy one like unsweetened soy or almond milk, you are triggering a rapid gastric emptying. Your stomach senses a large volume of liquid arriving all at once and quickly flushes it into the small intestine. This creates a concentrated hit of nutrients that the intestine absorbs with maximum speed. Even a small amount of carbohydrate, or the insulin-stimulating proteins in milk, arrive in the blood as a sharp wave. However, if you take that same glass of milk and sip it slowly over the course of 10 or 15 minutes, the biological response is completely different. The stomach releases the liquid in small, manageable increments. The absorption is gradual. Your body has time to adjust, and the pancreas can release a steady, low-level stream of insulin rather than a panicked burst. I want to introduce you to Robert. Robert was a 62-year-old retired pilot. He was meticulous about his health, and he had switched to unsweetened almond milk months ago. However, he noticed that if he drank his morning latte quickly while reading the news, his glucose would jump by 40 points. If he drank the exact same latte slowly over the course of a long breakfast, the jump was only 10 points. Robert proved something we see in clinical settings. The speed of consumption is a biological variable. I tell my patients to follow the 10-minute rule. No matter what you are drinking, make it last at least 10 minutes. Give your digestive system the respect it deserves. Furthermore, we must talk about the sequence of consumption. There's a rule I want you to memorize. Never let milk be the first thing that touches your tongue in the morning. If you drink milk, even the healthy options, on a completely empty stomach, there is no buffer to slow down the absorption. Instead, I want you to use the fiber buffer rule. Eat a few walnuts, a spoonful of chia seeds, or a bit of green vegetable first. This creates a mesh or a net in your stomach and intestines. When the milk arrives, it gets caught in this fiber net, slowing down its journey into your bloodstream. This simple change in sequence, fiber first, liquid second, can flatten your glucose curve significantly. Finally, consider the temperature. I often recommend my patients drink their milk warm or at room temperature rather than ice cold. Cold liquids can sometimes cause the stomach to contract and empty more rapidly into the intestine. A warm, soothing beverage encourages a more relaxed digestive process, which is always better for metabolic stability. We have covered a vast landscape today, from the rusted locks of your cells to the deceptive labels in the supermarket aisles. But information without action is just noise. I want to provide you with a clear, step-by-step blueprint to reclaim your mornings and stabilize your sugar. This is what I call the 21-day glucose reset. If you are ready to make a change, I want you to follow this 3-week protocol. In week 1, your goal is identification and elimination. For the next 7 days, I want you to be a detective. Look at every milk or cream product in your house. Turn the cartons around. If you see the words oat, rice, or any form of sweetened, or if the carbohydrate count is higher than 3 grams per serving, I want you to remove them. You are clearing the battlefield of the saboteurs. In week 2, we move to the transition phase. This is when you introduce the warriors and healers. Replace your old milk with high-quality, unsweetened soy milk or almond milk. This is often the hardest week because your taste buds are used to the intense sweetness of lactose or added sugars. Do not give up. Your palate will adjust, and within a few days, you will begin to notice the subtle, natural creaminess of these healthier options. In week 3, we focus on optimization. This is where you apply the how that we discussed in the last section. Start practicing the 10-minute rule. Implement the fiber buffer, eating a few nuts or seeds before your morning drink. This is the week where you will likely start to see the most significant changes in your finger prick tests or your continuous glucose monitor. To help you succeed, here is your label masterclass. When you are in the store, look for 3 specific words: unsweetened, organic, and 0 added sugar. If a label says original, be very careful. In the world of plant milk, original almost always means sugar has been added to make it taste more like dairy. And beware of the 3 words to avoid: maltodextrin, cane syrup, and rice extract. These are just scientific-sounding names for sugar that will rust your cellular locks just as fast as white table sugar. As we bring this journey to a close, I want to leave you with a final thought. Living with diabetes or struggling with blood sugar is not a life sentence of deprivation. It is an invitation to understand your body at a deeper level. Every time you choose a glass of unsweetened soy milk over a sugary oat milk, you are sending a message to your cells. You are telling your pancreas that you are on its side. You are telling your heart that you want it to beat strong for many years to come. Health is not a single, massive transformation. It is the sum of 1,000 tiny, intelligent decisions. It is found in that first glass of the morning. It is found in the patience of sipping slowly. It is found in the clarity of knowing exactly what you are putting into your body. If you found this information valuable, I ask you to do something important. There is someone in your life, a friend, a neighbor, a sibling, who is likely struggling with these same frustrations. They are doing their best, but they are trapped by the same lack of information you once had. Share this knowledge with them. You might be the person who helps them finally see the results they've been working so hard for. I am Dr. Ethan Cole. It has been an honor to walk through the science with you today. Remember, your health is in your hands, one choice at a time. I will see you in our next session as we continue to unlock the secrets to a vibrant, stable, and energized life. Take care of yourself and take care of your glucose.